Exciting news everyone, we finally have a cage for the OM system OM-1 camera, and guess what? It also fits the EM1 Mark III and the EM1 Mark II. Pretty damn exciting, right? Alright, let's get to it. Alright ladies and gentlemen, my name is Matt. Welcome to Etch Photography. I am an OM system ambassador, so I am pretty damn keen to show you guys the new SmallRig cage for the OM1. Now I know just from looking at forums and from my own research as well, people were crying out for a cage that fit their Olympus camera. SmallRig did have a cage for the EM1 Mark II, but they pretty much discontinued it, and it was very, very difficult to locate one. So people were using the kind of universal cage, which was pretty good. And there was a universal cage to fit the EM1X as well. However, there was no actual cage for the OM1 when it came out. So I actually reached out to SmallRig and said, hey guys, we have this new awesome run and gun flagship adventure camera. How about you make a cage for it? And they got back to me and said, sure, can you send us some more details on it? And I sent it away, and here we are with the cage. So first up, disclaimer, SmallRig did send me the cage and a few of the accessories that I'll be talking about today. They have no say in what I'm going to talk about in the video. They're not going to see the video beforehand. All my opinions are my opinions. And the way I use this cage is also going to, and mount and rig it, is specific to my specific needs. So yours might be a little bit different as well. All of the links will be, of every single item that I talk about, will be in the description. They are affiliate links, so I do get a little bit of a kickback on that. So just be aware, but that's how it is on YouTube. So that aside, let's get to it. So why do we use a camera cage? Well, everyone's needs are different, but generally the camera cage provides some extra mounting options to improve the ergonomics mainly for video use. With cameras like this that aren't dedicated cinema cameras, they usually only have one 1/4 screw on the bottom. So if you're going to be mounting a top handle or a monitor or a microphone, you need other mounting points to it. Now you can get things that go top handles, like this that I was using before, some cheap one off Amazon. It's not that good. And then I had this nice little one that I have been using. You might have seen in some of my other videos. It's all right. It's a nice small one, but they do just mount onto the top of the camera on the cold shoe, and it's not the most secure. They are strong, but when you're running around with it, it's not the best. So that's where a camera cage can come into it. Now, people do often use the camera cage as well for protection of their camera. I will say, yes, that is true. I have banged around my other cameras on the Blackmagics and it has protected it. However, this cage is only a half cage, which we'll talk about soon. And you'll kind of see that it doesn't actually protect any of the side. I mean, the top of the camera as well is unprotected, and the bottom, well, it's protected, so you can stop some scratching there, but everything that's mounted on the left, you'll see that it can also be knocked. So does this one offer that much protection? Not really, but it does offer a little bit of protection. So there's many brands out there that make different camera cages, but at the moment SmallRig are the only ones who make one for the OM1. So SmallRig have actually created a half cage for the OM1 rather than a full cage. So a full cage would cover all the way around on the right hand side where the right hand grip is. However, this cage is kind of like a 3/4 cage, I would say. So it covers 3/4 from the front, and then if you look underneath, it goes to about, I guess, almost halfway as well. So that means that the cage is pretty light. So this one's actually only 129 grams, which is absolutely nothing. Like when you hold it, it is so light. And so some of the disadvantages of having a small cage, I guess, are you lose out on the mounting points that can be on the right hand side. But in the case of the OM1, which is designed to be a run and gun, very fast, light kind of camera kit, A half cage is much more sensible, I think, because it keeps the weight down, keeps the bulk down, which is what the idea of this camera system is. Instead, what you want to do is just provide the bare minimum mounting points to make it even more functional for run and gun use. And so with this particular cage, what I'm going to do is I'll go over some of the key features of it, and then I'll get into two different rigging situations that I would use and why I've chosen those, and then go over some of the pros and cons of those rigging systems. So the cage itself features some ⅛ pins, ⅛ holes on the top, and it actually has an RE locating pin for the monitor or top handle, and on the side you'll get a NATO rail side protection bar, as well as lots of ⅛ that can mount cable protector to. And on the base we actually have an Arca Swiss plate that also has many ⅛ under here, and also a 3/8 hole as well. It also has a nice little magnetic flathead that you can mount screw the cage onto the camera. Now, the good thing about this, and like some of the other SmallRig cages, is that it's perfectly useful to mount straight to an Arca Swiss tripod. So you can literally get it, put it on the tripod, take it off the tripod, and mount it straight onto the Ronin RS2, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we get into the gimbal part. It also features a nice little hot shoe area to put your microphone. I don't have mine there, as you can see, because of the way this is rigged, but I'll talk about that again soon. Now, because the camera does only have one ⅛ hole on the bottom, some cages do have the potential to twist because there's nothing else to support it on the top. And some cages also, maybe like the universal ones, can screw into the flash area, and that will help it keep it secure. But this only has one mounting screw, but because of the way it's designed, and I'll show it here, it actually sits flush against the front of the camera, and that means that there is absolutely no opportunity for it to turn. Okay, so I think it's best now if I just show you the two different configurations that I would use for my type of shooting and why I have rigged it up this way, and we'll go over some of the accessories that I've used for it. Some are SmallRig, some aren't. Again, I'll leave links in the description below. So the very first one, I guess, is what I would call as my little very run and gun minimal kind of setup. So it obviously has the cage on the camera. We've got the SmallRig monitor mount, which is an RE locating pin here, and this also has an RE locating pin screw that goes into the monitor. I'm using my Portkeys LH5H, which is now a discontinued monitor. You probably still can grab one online. They're a 5-inch, super bright, 1600 nit, I believe. But I'll leave a link to the newer model down below, which is some crazy brightness as well. I think for me anyway, having a 7-inch monitor would be brilliant, especially on maybe my Blackmagic. But having a 5-inch monitor, especially on a camera like this, it's about the same size as the camera. It's super portable and small, and it's very light. It's only plastic. It's not the most expensive monitor, but it also gives me some waveforms, false color, and a really good, and I can load a LUT into here as well, which I'll talk about in another video coming up soon, that helps me monitor and keep my exposure and scene and color and everything really on point of what my aim is for the end goal of the video. So that's the Portkeys monitor, and on this I have a cable, which is a SmallRig cable, running HDMI into the camera into a micro HDMI. Now, one of the biggest flaws of, yes, it is a flaw. One of my biggest hates, if you've seen in any of my other videos, is the fact that a lot of these cameras that aren't cinema cameras use the micro HDMI. Now, let me have a look here. Many of you may have seen adapters like this one here that are pretty much plug into your HDMI cable and plug into the camera. Now, if you're like me, you've snapped multiple of these because that little pin there is, well, it's tiny and it's rubbish. So one of the beauties of having a cage is, especially this SmallRig one, using this HDMI cable that goes to a micro HDMI, it plugs straight into the side of the camera. SmallRig also sell this cable clamp that mounts straight onto the cage, and it's actually for the Fujifilm X-T4, but it fits this cage and fits this alignment perfectly. And so you plug your cable straight in there and screw it on nice and tight, and it won't necessarily stop the cable from being completely yanked out, but it will stop it from getting bumped and snapped. Like it's not going to be snapped or broken anywhere. And this cable protector also can protect the USB-C port as well. So if you're going to be powering the camera by a power bank or whatever you're going to need it for. But for me, it's just for the HDMI cable there. One thing I don't like, I guess, is that, well, it's all right. The port cover needs to be folded back on itself, and then the clamp goes on top. It's rubber, so it's fine for that to happen. I'm not entirely sure if you can remove these port covers, but I wouldn't, only because I have had trouble in the past with other cameras getting those back in. And then while these port covers are open, your weather sealing is out the window. So that is one consideration if you're going to be using a monitor as well, to be careful if you're shooting in adverse conditions, because those ports are now open. And you can't just block the USB-C unless you put a USB-C plug in there of some sort. But anyway, that does happen. That does work, sorry. So that cable is like the 35 centimeter. I actually think that I'm going to be getting the 55 centimeter, so I've got a bit more length. I can just wind it up with a cable tie under here, and that way I can use it on the gimbal if I wish with a monitor. But this is actually the perfect size right now, and you can see I've routed it through. I've actually routed it through my Rode VideoMic NTG, and that's keeping the cables nice and clean, which I really, really like. The cage also has a cold shoe mount on the top corner here. However, you can see when the monitor is mounted straight onto the cage, the microphone would get in the road of it. So it's not the most ideal. So what I have done is I've gotten a little SmallRig magic arm. It's just one of their little tiny ones, screwed it to the side of the cage in a right angle position. And then I have used a 1/4 to 3/8 little nut, and that mounts straight into the 3/8 of the bottom of the NTG. And then because this NTG has nice little cable routing options in here, I can route all of the cables through there, including the HDMI, in nice and tight, and those are out of the way. So that's really good. And having, I think the good thing as well for me is having the NTG to the side, because then if I want, and sometimes I do, I will use the Rode Wireless Go's, and I would like to be able to swap those out nice and quickly. So what I can do there is get that Rode Wireless Go, slide it straight into here, and then that has a nice little port space out of the way, and I can just hot swap those out and good to go. And I can just take the microphone off if I don't need it. So on the other side here, you may have seen in some of my other videos, I'm a very big fan of having a side hand strap. I film all the time with my Pocket 6K Pro and on my OM-1 as well, or any of my Olympus cameras as well, because I just love the security that I have. I can shoot single-handed and not worry about the camera getting knocked out of my hand or dropping, especially if I'm hanging out of a car or something moving. It's good to have that extra support. As well, for filming, I can use my hand like this, and it helps when this is a little bit tighter. It helps to also stabilize the shot, because I can let the camera rest and let gravity rest and move through the shot. So this is the SmallRig Black Mamba side strap, handle strap, I guess you could say. I will leave a link below to another one that's on Amazon, one of their other ones. I think this is their premium kind of one, which you can find on the SmallRig website. I don't have an Amazon link to that one, sorry, but you can hop on there. What I do really like is the fact that it is so small. Now, I potentially wouldn't be using this on a bigger camera, but for this particular camera, which is quite small, having a tiny grip like this, it's super soft and looks really cool, is actually far more beneficial than having a bigger strap, which is just not needed. I do also like that it is a really quick adjustment and that just locks off, and I can also just take it straight out if I need to. And the strap also just folds in itself and locks on there and mounts directly to the bottom, let's get this in here, mounts directly to the bottom of the cage as well, which is awesome. I also have my Peak Design leash, which is just here. I use the small Peak Design leash because I think the bigger one is just too thick and is not needed. With the cage, they just slide on there and there you go. And now that can sit out of the way of the camera, because the cage is designed to have that space for the strap as well. And I'll often be filming like this or like this, and then I've got 1 point of contact, 2 point of contact. I've got the gravity of this as well, and a 3rd point of contact here. I can get very, very stable shots using it that way. One of the considerations for having a cage as well is how well things are balanced, because if it's really off balance, it's hard to keep your images stable, but it's also hard on your body because you're fighting an uneven weight distribution. So this camera is super light already. The cage is super light. This weighs hardly anything on the side here. Yes, there is a little bit more on the left, but because I hold and manual focus usually under here, it's such a small and negligible amount of weight on the left that it doesn't really matter. We'll get into more about weight distribution when we go on to the handle mount as well. Also, I have the LH5H, and most of the monitors have a Sony NPF battery plate, or mount, I guess you could say. You can put big NPF batteries on here, but I just use these small little 550 model, which I'll leave a link in the description. And they are nice and flush, they're nice and small, light, and they'll run this for quite some time. And so for this particular setup as well, when the cable clamps aren't there, the monitor can be used unobstructed. However, when it is there, it will sit about like this, as you can see here on the side. I'll show you on this one too. And now I don't think that is a very big issue, because I have the giant monitor up here, and what we'll see here when it loads, let's hop onto here actually. Can we see that? Is that now I can shoot like this and look down on this giant monitor. But if I did need to see a clean feed, which is what is shown on this back monitor, I can also see that. But I've got all of my data that you would see normally on the back of the screen of if the monitor wasn't mounted on there. It's routed into the monitor up here. So I really don't need to see any information from this back screen, but it's nice to have that clean feed that's not obstructed by all of the other junk. And if I did want to, I can just press the info button and that will toggle, everything on and off the main screen as well. So that's really, really cool. Note though that you will lose touch focus ability if you're going to be using autofocus. However, you can still use the back thumb joystick and rotate the point around to try and find your focus. And I have a back button focus set up, and I can just press my back button and it will lock on there. So not a huge issue if you're going to do it that way. And so for my run and gun stuff, usually I'll be using the 12-100mm f4 Pro IS, because I think it's just the best all-round lens you've seen in my other videos. I just absolutely love it. and I have the tilter follow focus ring on here as well, gear, sorry, so it's much more tactile and easy to use. Now you can rig this up again with a plate underneath and put rails on there and use the follow focus. SmallRig have one, so do many other brands, but it's just making this far bigger than is needed, I think. I prefer to manual focus anyway, or if we are using autofocus, it's just a quick flick of the fingers and that catches, engages the manual and continuous autofocus there. I don't think there's a need for any follow focus. Again, this is a very, very minimal setup, I think. Just has the necessities, the monitor, the microphone, and the hand strap. That's it. Okay, onto the second rigging option, and that is to use a top handle. Now, I love using a top handle because it really, really helps get those low angle shots. I can hold the camera in different positions. I can hold it up higher. I can hold it out in front of me. I can do lots of pans across and whips. It just provides so much more versatility using a top handle. The only issue is when you're using a top handle, it increases the size of the rig. Now, if you really want to keep it minimal, I would go with the first option. But I think for most of my filming, if I was going to, especially using them to film kind of action types of scenes, I would definitely use the top handle. Now, this is the SmallRig handle that SmallRig recommended on their website. It has an RE locating pin which screws straight onto the top of the cage and cannot twist, and that's what those locating pins are. It has two cold shoe mounts on the side, one on the top, an RE locating rosette hole there, and another cold shoe mount here and here. So that there is so many cold shoe mounts on here that it is pretty ridiculous, but that is awesome because you can mount so many things just on this top handle. And I think it's very, very versatile, especially if you're going to be using little lights or have the microphone mounted on there, as well as the monitor. You have your options. So the handle is also super, super light. You can get really heavy handles that, yes, it increases the weight of the rig and helps keep things more stable, but you don't really need this rig to be heavy because the stabilization of the camera is phenomenal already. So having light, functional, but wide enough and big enough to be comfortable as well and to hold it nicely is super important. Now, I've got a fair few different top handles. As I mentioned before, I've used this cheapo one that mounts to the cold shoe. Wasn't very comfortable, wasn't very functional. Then I had my little one here that has just the cold shoe and the RE rosette hole there. And it's actually quite comfortable. Very, very small and compact, can fit in your pocket, but it's no good really for bigger, longer shoots, I don't think. This one has a nice rubber texture, non-slip, fits in your hand super nicely. And yeah, it's just an all-around great handle. So let me show you now how quick it is to change this rig over to the top handle rig. So let's unscrew this one. And we can now screw this one on the top. There we go. So it's nice and locked. It cannot twist because of those locating pins. And now this one can go into the top here. Again, it cannot twist. Now I've had a few monitor mounts actually that don't have those locating pins and they move around all the time, particularly on this monitor, and you don't want to be turning the monitor and rotating, especially if you've got a big battery on there, it can make it sag. These locating pins keep it all nice. And so we can move it around like this. Okay, so now we do have the option, if we wanted, we can move this off. Now I just remember that I cannot just mount my NTG straight into here because I've actually unscrewed the little bolt in, the little screw in here, and turned the hot shoe mount around to the side because that's how I use it on my Blackmagic. I slot it into the side. Pretty pointless to mount it into here sideways. So I'm not going to do it now, but I wouldn't, if I was going to be mounting like this, I would unscrew that little screw and have it sitting here. Clears the monitor. It's nice and clean. I can then take my Magic Arm out of there, plug this straight in, and now I have a nice handled run and gun setup as well. It's nice and clean, doesn't have actually anything hanging off to the side here except for the cable. And then I can get those nice smooth low shots. I can move this around if I need to. Having the cold shoes on the back, again, I can mount my Rode Go onto the back if I would like that. Could even mount it into the side here. I do also use the Sennheiser G4s if I did need to use those instead of the Rode Wireless Go. I can also mount those wherever I like, which is awesome. Obviously you don't have to use a monitor and then you can just run around with the top handle. I actually really love using the top handle. I'll keep the strap there because I can hold the camera in close like this. I can hold it down here. Okay, I can hold it out in front. It just gives so much more versatility to the rig and it doesn't add a huge amount of weight. So personally, I think I'll be always using the top handle and mounting everything like this with my microphone mounted here and my side handle here, side strap, sorry, and gives me all of that functionality. Again, I can put it straight on the tripod. I can take all of this off and then put it onto the Ronin, which we'll talk about next. Okay, so most of my shoots are going to be handheld because the OM-1 actually has fantastic in-body stabilization. However, there are times, as you might have seen in my forward ad, where I actually mounted the OM-1 to the Ronin because I was running with it nice and low, and paired with the stabilization of the camera and the stabilization of the Ronin, which is the RS2 model, is overkill for this little camera. It was very, very smooth. So what I recommend though is if you're going to be just using an OM-1 with a gimbal, I think the RS2 is probably overkill. You might want to go with the RSC2, or they've just released the new model of the RS3 and RS3 Pro. Go with that RS3 because it's still super strong, but it is more useful, for a smaller camera like this, if you're going down that path. However, I have this gimbal, so I'm going to show you what we can, how easy it is to just put it onto here. So if I have been shooting my handheld or on the tripod doing an interview or something like that, I can pull this off, take my monitor off, put it to the side, I can take out that. This probably wouldn't be here, but it doesn't matter anyway. Now the side strap is okay to be on there still. We talked about before, the OM-1 cage already has the RS2 plate on here, and Arca Swiss mount there, and it can literally slide onto here, lock on. I've already got it balanced, plug it in, and we can turn it on and start filming. Now, that was pretty quick. So if you're going to be using with a gimbal, it's so good to be able to have that mount already on the cage that can also just be unscrewed, unplugged, straight back onto a tripod because it's just a regular Arca Swiss plate. Back to run and gun, pop it onto there, pop the microphone on, plug it in, and away we go. There is also the option, obviously, if you don't want to have any of this on there, you can just have the cage by itself. Offers that little bit of protection. Still full access to all of our ports here, no obstruction to anything on the front, which is really good. Okay, onto some things that I don't necessarily like. Now, there aren't that many because I just think it's so simple and intuitive, and it's cheap, it's light, that those pros far outweigh any of the cons that there might be, at least for me. I've noticed that when you have anything mounted onto the RE locating pins on the top here, we do start to lose, and I'll show you some of here. You do have some other pinholes here. They are quite tight against the top handle or the monitor mount, and they're very difficult to actually mount anything onto there if you do want to do that. There's also these little pins, little holes on the side, the 1/4 20 holes you might be able to see here, and whilst they are really good as well, they're not actually that deep. So the normal regular bolts that you get, you might have hundreds of them laying around that come with pretty much everything. Say for instance, this magic clamp here, the bolt here is actually too long to fit into those holes. So if you are going to mount anything there that is slim, you will need to put a washer behind it. It's not the worst, but that is something to consider. Also, if you are going to be using a side handle, which SmallRig do make many of them, you will need a NATO side handle, which is fine. It clamps onto there. However, when you do clamp that onto there, you lose the ability to use the side clamp to keep that micro HDMI cable in there. And for me personally, having that clamp is far more useful than having a side handle, which I don't really use anyway. But that is the consideration if you're going to be using a side handle, is you have to choose one or the other, the clamp or the side handle, or figure something else out how to mount it there as well. So one of the other things that I've found is a bit of an annoyance that I think SmallRig, I don't know if it was just the way that it was manufactured or if it was just an intolerance on how things were measured up. But when this cage goes onto the EM1 Mark II and EM1 Mark III, they have the same body, so it's going to be exactly the same. There is some movement in the cage. Now, SmallRig on their website have stated that this cage can be used on the EM1 Mark III and the EM1 Mark II, and indeed it can, and I'll show you right now, but it just doesn't fit perfectly. First up as well, to show you how to use this, to take the cage off, you first have to take the lens off, and I will get a lens cap. Excuse the black magic one. Take that off, put our cap on, and you can see here how nice and flush that sits. Give you a look on this one as well. It just sits nice and flush against the body, and nothing is obstructed. There is no rotational turn at all because it's sitting against the body. So I've taken out my little pin, so my little flathead, and I unscrew the cage, and the cage is going to slide forwards and come straight off. I take my side handle off, OM1, sorry, sitting there. I grab my EM1 Mark III, which is pretty much the same body, but it is definitely different, and slide that on. Now when I screw this on, okay, I've got that quite tight. What I'm going to show you here is, and you might be able to see it in this one, maybe. In here, it doesn't actually sit, so look, I can rotate it, because where this is located, the pin on the bottom is sitting a little bit further forward than it is on the OM1. There is that little bit of play. Now, that might not be an issue for many of you. As you can see, everything else is pretty much exactly the same. I can mount it exactly the same as I had it before, but I don't know. It's, for me, as it is right now, this is unusable because of that movement, especially if you're going to be trying to swinging around shots and the camera moves unnecessarily. It's not useful. Even screw it up nice and tight, that camera movement is still there. So it would have been good if SmallRig had provided us with some, I don't know, something that can be put underneath this to stop that movement. You might be able to just, I don't know, stuff some foam in there, some plastic, a bit of rubber, I'm not sure. For me now though, that I'm using OM1, this is not going to be an issue because I probably won't put the cage on this anyway. But for those of you who are purchasing this cage specifically for your EM1 Mark II, EM1 Mark III, you need to take that into consideration because that could be an issue. And for me, it is an issue. So SmallRig, perhaps maybe you might have to to figure that one out. I'm not sure why you have done it that way. So one of the other things before we wrap up that I really do like is the fact that on the base of the plate, not only does it have that Arca Swiss mounting option here that goes on the RS2, but you can still use the Peak Design capture clip, which is also an Arca Swiss. Now, there are many of you, I'm sure, that love these Peak Design capture clips because of how versatile they are when you're hiking and got a backpack on. It's just good to have that option on there. I can screw that there. Screw that on. And I will pretty much just leave this on actually, because I can then, if I take all of this off, I can keep it on my chest strap, mounting, use it. And because I have actually changed on my RS2, I have got the SmallRig adapter plate here. I don't even know what it's called. I'll leave it in the description. Got it a while ago. But it is a different plate for the RS2 that can also accept the capture clip. The proprietary RS2 plate here couldn't accept the capture clip, but this one does. So I can then literally mount that in here, screw it on, and get away shooting with the gimbal. Take it off, mount it here. Because it's an Arca Swiss, it can go straight onto my tripod as well. And so now I've just added one extra layer of versatility to the cage, which was already, I think, really good. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Overall, I really do enjoy this cage. I'm a big fan of having a cage on the camera as long as it is providing some form of functionality and improved ergonomics. Otherwise, I don't think there is a need for it. For stills shooters, I don't think you need this at all. The grip on the OM-1 is plenty nice enough anyway. Perhaps you might want to get that side strap here, hand strap. I think that is a must for stills photographers and for video. But for video shooters, having this option, it's cheap, it's well made, it's super light, it's functional, it has only what it's needed on there to keep this a really good run and gun camera and really enable us as creators to start getting more unique shots. We can get low shots now because we've got a top handle. We can actually have the microphone on there at the same time. We have things nice and balanced as well. So I hope that helps and you enjoyed my breakdown of the new SmallRig OM-1 camera cage. I'm sure you will have more questions about it, and particularly on how you might be using it in your own scenarios. So please do drop a comment below if you have any questions, and hopefully I will be able to answer them. Again, I will leave a list of all of the different components that I use for my shooting in with these setups in the description below. And if you would like to see more stuff like this, particularly OM system / Olympus content, do hit that subscribe button, and please give us a thumbs up if you did like this video, and if you didn't, well, what can I do? So I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.